We're gonna decorate the pine trees on here, or the fall trees, and the different colors. And we need different colors of gilding polish, so I've got those out. There is the chocolate bronze, which is gonna be our first layer. Then we have the raspberry sorbet. And then I've got bright sunshine. And then last but not least, penny copper kiss. I've got a couple of the sponges. I'm not sure if I'm gonna use those. I've got my palette knife, and then I've got different colored brushes so I don't have to wash them as we go along. So let's get started. We're gonna start with the base coat, which is gonna be the chocolate bronze. Oh, pretty soon I'm gonna need a new one. So let's get that going. And for the base coat, I am gonna use my sponge. So grab your chocolate bronze, frost in the top of this, and then pull all the excess off. Now, when I'm doing things like this, a lot of times I like to leave them inside the square that they come into. It's just easier. I don't have to hold down the small piece. They keep their shape, that kind of thing. Especially when you're doing words, I really recommend that you leave it in there. But you can't really let it dry in there, especially if it's a glitter, because that becomes like a glue almost. So if I don't want to take mine out right away, I'll show you what I do just to make sure it's not gluing to the edges of it. All right, that looks pretty good. I've got it covered pretty well. So then if I'm not going to take them out right away, all I do is bend them a little bit so that I know for sure those edges aren't going to be glued in there when it comes to the kiss part. We should be done with the browns, so we can cover that up. Oh, don't forget to add a little bit of water. As you can see, mine is looking pretty chunky. So I'm just gonna add some water to it and then let that set up. And then clean off your palette knife, because don't think we're gonna be using that again. And then for our colors here, we're gonna start with the yellow. And I was just using this in the previous video. You should wash that. If it's gonna take you a while, go ahead and wash it. But it's not gonna take me a while, so I'm not really worried about it. So I'm just gonna use one of my paint brushes, and I'm gonna Bob Ross this thing. So just pick up some of the yellow. Try not to cover the whole thing. Leave some space. Making happy trees. There we go. That looks pretty good to me. And I'm just looking at my little lumps, making sure that I'm kind of smoothing them out. I'm not going to wash my brush or anything because I might want to come back and highlight with the yellow. Next, we're going to use the raspberry sorbet. We're going to grab another brush. Doesn't matter the size. And we're going to do exactly the same thing. I'm kind of going back and forth in like a V motion. Not that it really matters. You know, you're going to keep layering these guys until you like how they look. And we're just trying to get them to look like the beautiful fall trees that we see here in Michigan. And instead of brushing or wiping, I am dabbing for texture. Just kind of blending it in a little bit more. Nice thing about these is you just can't mess them up. All right, I'm gonna set that one aside now. And I'm gonna go in with the Penny Copper Kiss. Now this is a kiss, it's very thick. So I'm using my smaller brush to see, sometimes it's easier for these if we just use the sponge, but no, that's gonna go on beautifully. So for this, I'm just picking up a little dollop of it and I'm doing the edge. You don't want it too chunky. Make sure you level that out. Like I have a lot there, so I'm gonna pull some of it off. And this is the glitter glue, so it gets very sticky and very hard. So let's get those edges popped up so that we make sure it's not drying and then giving me a hard time when I try to pull it out. So just keep going until you think you've got it the way that you want it to look. And if you cover too much of one color up, like the yellow or something, you can always use your brush again to go back in. You could pick this up and just give it a little, if you want them to be more yellow. And you could do the same thing with the red. You could stay here all day just layering and covering up the trees, but we all have stuff to do, so commit to it and then be done. So let's just pull this one out so you can kind of see what it looks like all done. Of course, that glitter is pretty thick. It's going to need a little while to set up, but the rest of it dries super quick. And this is a technique you should be using when you're doing chipboard, is that you cut away at the chipboard. You never push these out. Until they fall off like that. Let's see, where am I connected here? Probably at the top. So I'm just gonna cut my chipboard off and then it should wiggle right out of there. Maybe that's where it's connected. When you color them like this, it's hard to see. All right, but that's what I want. I want it to just drop out of there. And then the other pieces will just pop off. And then I've got my beautiful trees that have all the pretty colors. And if you want them more red, you go back over it. If you want them more yellow, same thing. Look at that. That is gorgeous. Just gorgeous. So there you go, ladies. That's how we're doing our trees for our fall color layout.